When I think about myself as a sales professional, I think a lot about young professionals today that cringe when they think about sales. I love working with businesses that are growing because you have to be able to figure out what's working and what's not.
If you're going to close the biggest deal of your life and you have just one book and it's written by you, what's like a few things from you that you would just share? Welcome to the Close with One podcast. Today we have Mary Browning here talking about, oh my God, the fear of not being successful as a sales rep. You've decided to take the bag, but you don't want to drop it and have nothing in it. But how do you start a sales call so well that in the first 30 seconds, you've set this record in their mind that they really trust you and love you? And it might take more than one call to close the deal. Maybe it takes 2 years, but how to do this so well that they trust and pursue you and they don't think of you as Darth Vader or a stormtrooper or someone in the Slytherin house that's going to take you for a bad ride. Buckle up. There's so many insights and 3 massive tips that she drops that if you're about to go on an airplane and close the biggest deal of your life, do not miss these 3 tips. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Where does your story actually begin as it relates to who you are today, how you've mastered things in sales and marketing? Of course, we never really master these things. We just keep learning about ourselves and seeing great things that other people do, or, things that we did that were like, that was a disaster. Never do that again.
There's many of those. So the question is, where does my story start?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I would say my story from a career standpoint starts with something my dad said to me as a young child. My dad was a computer executive. If they called a computer executive in the 90s, which you would call, 90s into you'd call tech today. But he just said to me, the closer you get to revenue, the better. And so I graduated from the University of Dayton. I actually had the opportunity to travel. I lived in Ireland for about a year. And then I came home and I was broke. and and I thought, okay, now, now's the time to get a job. And so I was talking to a neighbor of mine who mentioned a company, a local company that did outsourced sales development. What that meant was cold calling. And I said, my dad taught me, get as close as you can to revenue. And so I found myself in my first cold calling role. And that's really where it started.
So you had was it a legit phone book or something that you would open up and be like, I need to make a lot of calls today?
Yeah, so this was a women-owned business local here to Indianapolis. And so, she was running a very robust sales development process for a lot of companies, technology companies, local businesses, and um, it actually had a technology that the company had also founded to make cold calls. So I did have a list, a list of people, list of relevant companies, and a phone. I remember, I remember being so nervous for that first one, as a young professional. And the first one's always the hardest. First one's always the hardest.
Oh, yes, because you're just wondering, what's it going to be like? Are they going to just hang up on me or do not call me ever again or
Yeah.
string me along and say, yeah, I'll have my people talk to your people and let's meet again next week,
Yes. Yeah.
which is the worst if you believe that to be the case.
Hmm.
And I remember being early on going, oh my gosh, they asked for my brochure. They
Yeah.
wanted my pricing. Woo! Go to the boss and say, this one's going to close. They want to meet next week. This one's great. And they're like, we'll see.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. Talk about those early times in your career, figuring stuff out along the way that you're like, this is what I'm learning about people. This is what I'm learning about myself. And this is what I'm learning about sales.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that first role. I would say it made me deeply data centric. in the early days, that was because I ended up, starting in cold calling, but then I actually spent about 8 years at that business, really holding every role, leading every team. And so I had done hundreds and hundreds of campaigns for companies. And it's campaigns, it's pipeline, it's conversions. You're constantly iterating. Every role that I've had really since then, I've talked about this theme of being data centric and the power of testing, the power of iterating. And I'll talk about predictive index in a while, in a little bit, as a kind of data point there. But for me, it was the foundation of who are we going to reach out to? What are we going to say? Um, how do we turn and ask for the meeting? But then how do we have a framework for actually knowing what's working and what's not? And I even still have clients today where I'm talking through just some of the fundamentals of that. Um, you got to know how many people you're reaching out to, how many conversations you're having, what's happening in those conversations. And then it continues through the entire sales process. So I love working with businesses that are growing because you have to be able to figure out what's working and what's not. And that framework, I don't know, it's funny. It's just not to go through so many campaigns where that was missing and feeling like you're blind is, whew, it's tough. So I go back to that quite a bit.
Oh my goodness. You remind me of so many organizations that I was at as a product manager or a product marketing manager. And the CEO pops their head in and says to the CMO, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening in marketing? What are you guys up to?" "Oh my goodness, we're running all these campaigns. You wouldn't believe how successful things are. We're busy. Could we hire more marketing people? We need more." And then the CEO can go, "Well, yeah, but what's really working? I'm spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on you people. Where's the proof?
Mhm.
What's actually working? And what should I put more money in that's going to
Exactly.
give me a bigger ROI?" And then that begs the question of what you're talking about, which is what's the framework? What are the analytics? What have we tested? What's horrible? And what actually maybe works a little bit
Hmm.
that we could somehow make better?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I remember being at a SaaS company that used to be just good old enterprise, like Microsoft was
Mhm.
enterprise. You could buy it, get a box mailed to you, and you could buy software maintenance. And when you had a question, you could call Microsoft and they would say, "Oh, you're not on the maintenance plan. Why don't you sign up? Otherwise, it's X amount just to get your question answered." And I remember looking around and waiting for a really great product to market. And we had a new one coming out. And they said, "This is our first SaaS.
Yeah.
It's going to be great." I said, "All right, well, what's the last great launch that we did?" And they said, "Well, it was like 10 years ago that we had a really great launch." And it made me think about what you're talking about, which is how do we set this up so that you get success as early as possible, closest to the revenue? And I asked the product manager and the CEO, "What's the revenue number that you want? Just tell me the number."
Mm.
And they're like, "Hey, this is the number." I'm like, "Okay, great. So how long would it usually get you to that number?" I said, "Usually our 1 year revenue goal takes us a few years to get to."
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, that's fair. That's truthful. What if we could get there in like 6 months?" And they're like, "No one ever does that here."
Mm. Mm.
And I just said, "Why don't we do things a different way?"
Mm.
And I told them about my experience studying Steve Jobs and a framework that I put together after studying him. And we followed it. It was great. At the end of the first day of launching a new product and the first week of launching it, the prospects stood up and looked for the salespeople and said, "Hey, I heard you've got this. I don't want it just for a month, or I don't want to just try it out. I want to prepay a whole year. Can you give me a discount?
Wow.
And I was like, holy crap, that mindset works elsewhere. And they got to their annual revenue number in a week. And the salespeople were thrilled. The marketing people were thrilled. And I was just quietly behind the scenes going, wow, that works. Where else can we use this? It's kind of fun to be the quiet person that lets everybody else have the deal and lets them all close. Because honestly, don't like doing sales myself. I like the human trust piece. That's fun for me because it's like I'm an anthropologist or an archaeologist going, what's your culture? What are you like? If I onboarded you as a client, am I going to regret it? And what does it take to be trusted there? Because you've probably met other people that have been burned by other salespeople.
Yeah.
And they've spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on something that afterwards they're like, wait, why doesn't it have that feature that I asked for that you said was coming out?
Yes.
Yeah. So what like most excites you about what you do today? And like, why are you where you're at?
When I think about myself as a sales professional, I think a lot about young professionals today that cringe when they think about sales. Somehow it's gotten this stigma, but I am really, really proud to be a sales professional. And I think part of that is, I started my career on the sales development side, but I'll tell you, I had a bug in my ear saying, Mary, you could be a really, really good salesperson, and I think you would really enjoy it, this bug. But I think the sales profession today, how do I describe this? I pushed down that bug for a long time.
Really? Why?
I did. And I think it's because I thought there was a like one right way to sell.
Mm.
And I would try to model that. And over time, I realized the most powerful thing I could actually do was lean into how I'm wired and how I would do it. I had a sales leader early in my career. I was in an account executive seat. I was learning the ropes and I was kind of doing the whole shadowing thing. And um, and he said, Mary, you're trying to do it like me. Why are you trying to do it like me? And that opened up so much for me. And I think one reason why I love the sales profession so much is one, my dad was right. The closer you are to revenue, the better. Um, but secondly, there's a transition where you go from like learning how to play basketball and then learning how to play basketball like you. And it's the same thing in sales. And I so enjoy that journey and that process. And I love helping others find their feet as well. So I spent a lot of time in my career coaching and mentoring young professionals, women in sales, which is an area that I'm really passionate about. Um, but when I consider what Advisa does with predictive indexed and a journey that took me a very long time to embrace, if I had predictive index much earlier, how much faster that journey would have been for me. Because I was weeding through, I think, a lot of doubt, a lot of, wow, these salespeople look so different than I do. They do it differently than I do. And when I made that transition and embraced just the genuine nature of the profession as a whole, one, I was very successful, and two, I got a lot more joy out of it. So I don't know if that quite answers the question, but
It does. It does. I so much agree with you. And it's funny that you said the bug in the ear. Like, what does that really mean to you personally when they're like, I got the bug in the ear?
mm, it doesn't go away. No matter what work you're, no matter what work you're doing. Um, I think it also enabled me to be kind of a little brave and put my name out there for things that were coming across our desk. So this time frame, I was working for a SaaS business in the employee engagement space, And I had just kind of got off a stint of running our sales development function. And I sat down with our founder and I said, I want to sell, I want to carry a bag. So I think the bug in the ear was that, like, you're going to be pissed off if you don't give this a shot. Um, and, it was interesting. I had some people that looked at me and said, what if you fail? And I was like, gosh, that goes so against my grain. Like, I'm not going to fail. But it was still scary. It was
Yeah.
still like, the image of what I had in my head of who I needed to be successful in sales. And I just found that that's not the case. There are so many different personalities and genders, like all of that stuff where you can be successful in sales. For me, it was once I took the bug in my ear to be courageous and then go in and do it my way.
Man, I so much resonate with that whole piece. I had this uncle that every time he met me, he would do this classic sales handshake and tell a story. And I'm an introvert and I really hate talking without knowing the context of who I'm meeting with. And forever
Mhm.
at lunchtime, I'm sitting there in fourth grade. I'm like, nobody talk to me. I don't want to talk to anyone around me because I was freaked out socially.
Yeah.
And when there was a job to be a product manager in medical devices, which to me was always, oh my gosh, you're selling to doctors and nurses and they want clinical proof. How is this going to be better? How many more people were you going to save with this over this other thing? And it was so hard to get that job because they wanted me to be a male nurse. And I was like, I just went through the dot-com bubble burst. I just finished my MBA.
Yeah.
That takes a while. I don't think I've got 3 or 4 years to become a male nurse or whatever that takes. I was like, love it or not, I'm here. I want to be the product manager. And still they were like, now we want to see what you're like in sales. And I thought, well, wait, I was here for a product manager. We're putting you through sales training.
Oh
If
my goodness, Mark.
if you don't become the best salesperson in the class, I don't know if your position's going to last all that long. I'm like, oh no, I've never really sold.
Yeah.
This is freaky. And I lived in South Boston and had an hour-long drive. And I got there early. I stayed there late. And after 2 weeks of the grind, I was exhausted. And I came out of it with the highest score in the class. And they looked at me and they're like, wait a minute. Are you sure you want to be in product? Why don't you become a salesperson?
Mm.
And I'm like, no, that Harry Potter hat said I'm supposed to be in the Gryffindor house, not Slytherin. Because to me, sales was being in that house
Yeah.
of the dark side or working for Darth Vader. I just thought of it as it's all the stormtroopers are going to take all the deals and close them.
Mm.
I was like, no, I don't care. It's a great job in LA.
Yeah.
It's a whole new position, representative for medical devices. So cool, but
Wow.
I just don't see myself doing that. I never want to be a salesperson.
I can't even help but laugh. I
Why?
one, because you're very funny. I love the Harry Potter image. But it's interesting because I think in that moment back then where I didn't have a language for it, I was kind of feeling the same thing. The like, which one? But I knew I needed to go out and try it. And it sounds like you did the same.
Oh man, it wasn't until I was forced to do it. I like was 2020 a bad year for you maybe?
Just slightly.
Yeah.
I think I was blacked out the whole time.
Oh my gosh, weren't we all? I still can't go into grocery stores sometimes without the stigma of like, do I have my mask?
I know. Ditto. Hmm.
20 Would you believe that 2019 was the worst year of my life to date and 2020 was the best?
Wow. Why
In
is that?
20 Yeah, it was nuts. In 2019
Yeah.
I lost my 4 kids
Oh, goodness.
due to a divorce
Okay.
that I decided was the thing to do. And I lost $1 million house,
Oh
the
gosh.
4 kids. I was in line to be CEO of this really great company. And I just thought I had everything figured out. And I realized, Mark, you have nothing figured out. Your life is horrible. You're doing it all wrong as a husband, as a father, as an employee. And I
Mm.
just realized life needed to get unplugged for me to figure out the one thing that really mattered. And through that process, everything ended and I started my new life. And the pandemic began like literally the day of the documents being signed.
Oh, Mark. Wow.
And I'm like, what do I do? No employees, no office, no jobs, nothing. And I had started a digital marketing agency and I had met someone that was really great at sales. And I
Mm.
met them in a mastermind. And then she said, I'm really struggling with this one thing. And we're thinking on it, like, what is this one thing that's bothering her?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I am 80% to goal to my quota. I've been working on becoming the best salesperson since 2014. I used to be poor and now I'm in a new place and my revenue, my take home salary is 800,000 a year. And I'm like, so wait, what's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, my goal is 1 million and I'm not there. I'm like, okay. So I do a meeting afterwards with her and I say, hey, let's talk. I'd love to tell you my story. I write up 30 or 50 or 100 beautiful PowerPoint slides on my life and all the great things I've done and how I can bring her a lot of money. And it dawned on me, I was about to do it the dumbest way possible. And 30 seconds before the call, I just get this. You said the bug in the ear. To me, it was like this message from above or something like that, where it's like, you can ask one question and maybe show a slide, but after that, shut it down.
Yeah.
Be real,
Yeah.
listen.
Mm.
And at the end of that conversation, she was like, I'm hiring you. I didn't give her a price or
Wow.
anything.
Wow.
She just said, I'm hiring you. You're going to run my team. You're going to help me get to the 1 million.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, let's do it. She became a friend. She came to the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
She got her, she more than got her goal. But it wasn't about that. It was about just real trust.
Mm.
And I'm an introvert. I'm freaked out about building trust and human connection. And I'm afraid of messing it up and having that person go, Mark, you were too salesy. I'm going to pretend like I'm going to meet you again, but I'll ask for pricing and I'll say that my people will talk to your people and they won't. And I just learned there's got to be a better way.
Mm.
Whatever you're selling,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million deals, $100,000 deals, or just $47 for a book or something.
Yeah. I've learned a lot of lessons there.
Yeah. What are some things that you would share with today's audience of, if you were to say to someone, if you're going to close the biggest deal of your life and you have just one book and it's written by you, what's like a few things from you that you would just share? I would put this in the book before that person gets on the plane and just here's some of your stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me pause for a second and I'll collect my thoughts on this. This is a really great question. I think there's a lot to unpack. Um, the first thing I'd share, and this is such a simple thing, but has been so huge for my success in sales or my success coaching other salespeople. And that is, it's in like the first 30 seconds of the meeting. And that is set expectations about what we're doing today. Um, I've learned I can't pinpoint one deal, but for a long time, I'd go into sales conversations. I'd have my list of questions I needed to ask them. And then I was going to show them some stuff and ask for the deal. And I remember a sales coach of mine saying, how can you be you when you're just listing off questions? So that was definitely the first piece. Got to be in the conversation and listen. But for me, I got so much momentum in that first 30 seconds by being able to say, this is who I am. This is the company I'm with. This is what I want to do today. By the end of the call, we're going to make a decision together. And it's really like it's the first thing I actually coach folks on. Missing that means you're leaving the rest of the call up to chance. And I'm not willing to bet on that. And so one is just you need a structure for that. All sales is, I've learned, is just moving people through a process, getting them as far as they can go on that call. Not how far they can go, not how I can push them, how far they can go. And creating at the beginning of that call, beginning of that meeting, a framework for making sure that happens. By the end of the call, we're going to figure out if there's anything here that's worth continuing to evaluate. Does that sound good to you? So that would be my first thing. My second would be, and this actually comes from a very, very good friend of mine who is the best salesperson I've ever seen. She was helping me at a technology company where I was newer to the sales team. And I was like, hey, listen to just these 3 calls. Listen to, and I was cringing because I was a robot. And she said, Mary, you're a robot.
Yeah.
You're a robot in these conversations. Felt like I needed to be so buttoned up and so serious. And that was really hard for me to transition from that, from a very, robotic, here's how we work the process, here's how we work the call. Um, where honestly, I tried to find ways as early in those sales meetings to be human. Hey, I'm going to be honest with you. We just changed the sales deck right before this conversation. So I'm going to say that up front because I really want to get your feedback on like what actually resonates in this slide deck. Some way to just get out of this is a very rigid, and she really helped me do that. Really helped me do that. The third thing I'd say is self-awareness. So I mentioned earlier in my career having this bug in my ear, not feeling confident I could make this jump. I'll be honest, I didn't have a language for that early in my career. I didn't understand why there were certain sales environments that energized me and certain sales environments that drained me. I didn't understand why I was leading the way that I was. I knew the instances that felt right, and I knew the instances that felt friction, but couldn't put any words to it. And so the self-awareness exercise that I've been able to go through with Advisa is knowing what my predictive index profile is. So this is different than other behavioral assessments because it's actual behavioral data that is measuring how our brain is wired in terms of what environments are we drawn to, what environments are we authentically ourselves in, and how do we respond to others. And so this clarity about myself helped me understand why I loved being in builder environments from a sales perspective. It helped me understand that too much information about something is actually really overwhelming for me. And so when you know those things about yourself, you can authentically figure out how in this one sales meeting can I bring my best self? And so that would be the third.
Wow. So I'm hearing set the expectations, become human as quickly as possible, and figuring out what are the best behaviors that you could bring on the call that draw the person out in a way that they go, I want that. And they're almost going, hey, that one thing that you mentioned in your not salesy presentation actually has got me curious. Could you show me that?
Yeah.
Because that's the start of it, where they pull you and they go, I kind of want to know a little bit more. And you're like, oh, I could show you that.
Mhm.
But why do you want that? Because today I was going to pitch you on this thing because I thought, in my research, you guys would care about this. No, we figured out that problem last week.
Yeah.
This is why I'm on today.
Yeah.
And they could even go, I was thinking you were going to be really salesy, and I was hoping I would learn something today. You already gave me the microphone and you already gave me time.
Mm.
I agree with your 3 steps. Those are fantastic.
Thank you. And that third one really relates, I think you just said this a couple minutes ago, to confidence. Confidence is so imperative in a sales conversation. A lot of years I was faking it. Now I can be, meaningful and intentional about it.
Oh, wait a
But
minute. So, how do you fake it versus actually be it?
you do just that. You fake it until you then got it, but what's really insightful that predictive index I've learned helps with is to help you know for yourself what drives your own confidence, what things you need to be confident. And um, in a high stakes sales conversation, there's a lot of moving pieces. You have to come off as an expert. And so, when I say I faked it early in my career, it was I'm going to learn how I can take this information about my product and share it in a way that's authentic to me. And I'm going to act confident. And then you get so many at bats, right? That then it starts feeling very, very natural. But what I didn't know back then was um, the things that give me more confidence as an individual, what in my brain, right? And so the example I'd give there is I'm very high on two drivers with predictive index. One is confidence comes actually internally for me. It's internal versus external, but at the same time, I've got a second drive working kind of against that is I get confidence externally as well, meaning from others. And so when I can actually design in a sales conversation a way for me to feel that I can be internally confident, right? But also getting recognition from others is part of that. I can lean into being naturally very good at reading faces and adjusting and building that relationship in that way, which could be very different from somebody else. So, just another example there.
My goodness. You just said one of my favorite things, which is like reading faces. There's What does a face look like if they're bored silly and you take the PowerPoint slides and you put them here?
Yeah.
You miss their reaction.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want to see that they fell asleep on slide number 3.
I've actually shut the PowerPoint presentation down before. Said, I know you're not tracking with me.
Yeah. How many more minutes do you need to check your email before you come back to my slide pitch?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sales is a glorious profession because if you can serve that other person so well, they'll ask you, hey, what's that like? What could it do for me? Who else has tried this that's maybe like me? They're not trying to shut you down. They're trying to go, how does this suit going to look if I wear it? Do I look good in blue?
Mm-hmm.
Well, based upon your colors and what you've described, yeah, you could. But let's really figure this out together because this might not be where you should start, and maybe not with us
Mm-hmm.
because we don't onboard people that maybe aren't great fits because then you're going to be upset with me. And I don't want you to be saying these guys are terrible.
That's right.
A client of mine just asked me a little bit ago, hey, someone just pitched me and I really think I want to do this. What do you think? I
Hmm.
said, I don't know. I'm going to look and see who they are. And I studied them and I was surprised. There was a 17-minute long YouTube video on why not to hire that company.
Hmm.
And I thought, it's just an upset person, like one upset person. I watched it and then I saw a bunch of other people comment that says, yeah, they're a little shady. They just changed their name. They promise this, but they do that. And I thought, oh, I should probably share this with him, but say, again, I don't know if this is real. It might not be fair. It might be a bunch of grumpy people that maybe weren't a great fit. They still could be a great fit for you,
Hmm.
but go into that knowing
Yeah.
that there's a perspective here.
Hmm.
And he ended up appreciating that and then asking me, well, what do you think? I said, well, there is someone on our team that can do that for you, but I
Hmm.
want you to meet him. If you love him and you think he's a fit, great. But I never thought we would be here. I want you to be where you want to be, where you love it. And last week he signed up and said, let's do this. I'd be insane not to hire you
Hmm.
and the team. I'm like, okay, that's your choice, but this is going to be a lot of work. So
Hmm.
buckle up if you're ready. Oh, wow. When you condense it down to the things that you've shared, people that are listening in today, whether they're new at sales or they're on this trajectory of how do I serve people without being pitchy?
Hmm.
It's amazing because every time I join a conversation, I'm checking myself going,
Hmm.
what do you need to do to really take care of this other person?
Hmm.
What do you not know that you need to know that will help serve them? And some deals take 2 years to close.
Amen.
And it's not, we're going to close you today and it's 20% off
Yeah.
only today.
Yeah.
That creates bad client engagement if you're always going to them with the forced close, forced discount. We only have one spot left. I mean, I get it. There are times when there is one slot left and you legitimately can't onboard too many people. That's real. But what does it do to them subconsciously when you hit them with that? It triggers fear rather than love.
Yeah.
You were going
Yeah.
to say something?
Yeah. I think I'll go back to that comment I made, and it may not be worded extremely well, but um, in a sales conversation, literally the salesperson's job is to help that person get as far as they can in that one conversation. Now, I didn't really specify how far they can go. What does that actually mean, right? Um, it's as far as they can go in helping them make a decision. That's the right decision for them. And so I think so much of there's two things I'll share, I think, in how to bring this human aspect of servant leadership, servant alignment to a sales conversation. And the first one is really ensuring you're sharing that. I am here to help you make the best decision for you and your business. And everything that we're doing in this conversation is to help you get clarity to that. But that's why I'm going to ask you some questions. That's why I'm going to dig really deep into what you're bringing to the table. This problem, is it impacting the business in a big way or not? Or what have you looked at? What have you thought? So just it's as early in the possible, early, excuse me, early in the conversation as possible to position as that. I'm not going to sell you something that's not going to be a fit for your business. Um, and so I'm going to ask questions so I can help you decipher that. It's language that makes that very, very evident, and it makes it a partnership from how much research have you done already? What do you already know? I don't want to repeat something back to you you already know. And so I think so much of this is in the agenda, the verbal agreement at the start of that conversation and weaved all the way through. I just feel like that helps differentiate sales rep from average sales rep, really. The second thing I'd say, I keep going back to this self-awareness, um, but I've seen so many high performing individuals I worked with unknowingly trying to operate outside of their natural strengths. And in a sales conversation where it might be 2 years, they might be really, really early in their evaluation process. The differentiation, the things that get buyers to want to continue to have the conversation with you is where you're authentically you in that. I may say it as, hey, I'm going to ask questions because of X, Y, and Z. You may say that differently. So when you don't know your natural behavioral strengths, that gets really hard. And so much of that is understanding your PI pattern. So you stop being somebody else and you're scaling what works for you.
For people that are interested in what you just said, where do they go to start to learn about the PI index and all of these things? Is there a starting place?
Yes, I would say take the assessment. So you can actually go to Advisa's website. We've got a link for free PI. Go and take it for yourself. That's the very, very first step. You're going to get a report back that talks a little bit more generically about folks that have your PI pattern. The second step I'd recommend is having a 15-minute conversation with myself or one of our consultants to go from what's this piece of paper with dots and sticks to what does this actually mean for me? How does this compare to the role that I'm in and the process that I'm using to sell, right? A velocity or more transactional sales motion requires very different things than an enterprise, consultative, long, getting a lot of people involved, right? So when you start to learn that about yourself, you can find ways to unlock the friction that might be happening or change your approach in a way that more naturally aligns to it. So I would say it's those two things, the perfect place to start.
And speaking of natural alignment, when you're not in work and you're thinking about what matters in life and legacy and personal purpose, like a nonprofit or something like that, what are the things that are near and dear to your heart?
Mm. Yeah, gosh, when you said that, when you said legacy, the first thing that I thought about really was my dad. That's where we started this conversation. I unexpectedly lost my dad a couple years ago, and so the legacy means an entirely different thing, I think now, especially as a mom and a wife, and someone who's I'm a working woman, right? And a lot of that was I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. And so everything that I do from a work standpoint is to achieve balance. I think between those things, being able to work and do really meaningful things and having time to be a mom, and having time to be a wife too. So life is short. But that from a legacy standpoint, I'll share that. The other couple things I'd love to talk about, one is a local organization to Carmel, Indiana, called the O'Connor House. This is an organization that I've been in different ways involved in really over the last 12 years. Actually, 12 years ago, prayed for an organization where I felt like I could take my talents that I learned in the business world and apply them to a nonprofit environment. And through a very uncanny way, that's how I met the O'Connor House. And so I served on their board for a long time. I did a stint as their board president. What this organization does is it supports women, moms who are pregnant from at-risk backgrounds. And so the entire mission of the organization is to eradicate poverty. And so we do that by not only are we a shelter for these women, and sometimes even they'll have younger children, but they can stay in the house, but they enlist in a program to help them really get back on their feet. Things like, house, apartment, steady job, steady income. We have an amazing alumni program for hundreds of women who have gone through this. So the O'Connor House is one that's very near and dear to my heart. The other topic that's been very, very top of mind for me recently, and is not a pleasant or positive one. It's a tough thing to talk about, and that is our children growing up and having exposure to things online. And in my hometown, we very unfortunately had an instance of a 17-year-old who was online gaming, was groomed by an individual, and she was murdered earlier in the last couple of months. So I don't know her personally, so I want to, with respect, be able to talk about this individual and her family. Her family today is pushing for law change, which needs to happen. And one of those pieces is in our school systems, how are we talking about this with our teenagers, with our children that behind a screen on their phone can put themselves in a very, very dangerous situation and they maybe don't even know it. So one is just training in the school system about it. And two is when we look at when somebody is missing and you don't know the reason why, there's certain qualifications that have to hit for an Amber Alert. And so for those who may have seen this, they've started pushing for a pink alert, which pink was her favorite color, so that we can alert of these situations much faster before they become catastrophic, which in this instance, they call it Haley's Law. And so if you look around Fishers, Indiana, maybe even Carmel or Indianapolis, if you see pink bows, that's in honor of Haley.
Wow. So for people whose ears are tuned into this and you want to support Haley's Law and O'Connor House, do so. Drop it in the comments, share that you support. It's so important for Mary to hear that side of her is also heard, not just how to be the greatest salesperson possible to really serve your client, because it's about the purpose that we have here and the impact that we make, not that what we put in the bank account. That's immeasurable in terms of where you go later, and you can't take it with you. It's not a real thing. So many things go to dust and rust, but the impact that we make and the future legacy, talked about being a mom and a wife, that's real legacy.
Love that. Beautiful.
Thank you for being on the show today and sharing what you did.
It was such a pleasure. What a great time. Thank you for your intentionality and your questions and sharing some of your stories too. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Me too. You're welcome.